Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. In today's terrifying news, Denmark comes out and says they have created a virtual reality way to determine if people have the medicine or do not have the medicine. So just imagine putting on some pair of goggles. I remember those magazines that I used to get as a kid that in the back you could order like X-ray vision glasses or something. So imagine getting your cerveza sickness glasses where you could just put them on and look around you and you could determine who has the medicine and who does not. And if we give the government that type of power, it's not going to stop with just the cerveza sickness. It's just like the Patriot Act in 2001. We're going to have that level of government intrusion potentially for the rest of our lives. In fact, and again, it's no certainties here, but the probability would be high that if we allow the government to step over that line, that they will be using this type of technology more and more and more. It will take away your privacy and will be a complete intrusion upon your freedom and liberty. I just think back to when I was in New Orleans to speak at the New Orleans Investment Conference. Every single place you would go, they would ask you for your papers. So currently, maybe someone could forge those papers, or I hear a lot of people in the comments on social media saying, "Oh, well, if they have this rule or regulation, well, I'll figure out a way around it." Let's say, and I'm not encouraging you to do that. I'm not saying that anyone should break the law. I'm just saying that I hear that a lot on social media. But if Denmark is creating these types of glasses, well, why on earth couldn't they implement that in some sort of like metal detector? You can imagine moving forward how you would, to get into a grocery store or to get into a cafe or a restaurant or the gym, you would have to go through what looks like a metal detector that would scan you to make sure, or tell the attendant or the local government, because remember, we're all going to have a social score, and that would tell the authorities, go into a central database, or the bouncer at the restaurant, the cerveza sickness bouncer, it would tell them whether or not you have had the medicine. And so you don't even need a passport anymore. And if you think I'm making this up, I wish I was. And hopefully this video is inaccurate. I mean, it's from Reuters, so I don't know. Hopefully this never comes to fruition, but this is what I'm talking about, guys. Let's go over to the video. And here it is. Denmark trials VR game. Oh, this is a game. Yeah, this to me, this is not a game. This is, well, this would be similar to calling what they were doing in the 1930s in Germany a game, if you want my opinion. But here it is. Let me go ahead and switch the mics and you guys can listen to what they're saying.
Okay. Skal jeg genstarte, eller? it felt really real. So you kind of like took it away, like kind of that feeling of uh, having to navigate between people who are sick and healthy. So yeah.
There you go. You guys get the gist of it. So, it just goes back to what I've said on this channel in so many of these videos lately, where every single day I say to myself, it cannot get any crazier. That's the good news. It can't get any worse. And then you wake up the next morning and you see headlines like this. And honestly, I don't want to go down the conspiratorial path, but I think if you don't at least consider the talking points that seem maybe more conspiratorial, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And I think you're whistling by the graveyard, potentially. I mean, let's think back to times in history in other countries, specifically the 1930s in Germany, maybe the 1920s in Russia, or maybe a little bit earlier in Italy with, with Mussolini. I mean, we look back on those, or the Berlin Wall would be a great example of that, where you had East and West Germany being divided. And we look back on it now and we say, oh, well, of course, George, this isn't comparable to that, because back then it would have been obvious what XYZ dictator was trying to do. Or it would have been obvious what they were trying to do in Berlin, in East Germany with West Germany. Oh, really? You sure about that? Because I almost guarantee you that 95% of the average Joe and Janes out there would have said the exact same thing back then that they are saying now. That, oh, you're just fear mongering. Oh, those glasses that they come up that just shows you who has the medicine and who doesn't. Oh, yeah. The government's never going to use that for nefarious purposes. Take off your tinfoil hat. You see, my point is, don't you think they said the exact same things in East Germany? Once they started building that wall, you know darn well some people at the pub were like, you know what? This is bad. This is not good. The government is not going to use that wall to keep people out, which is what they were claiming. The government is going to use that wall to keep us in. And I almost guarantee you they were getting the exact same lines from their friend and family member Freds. Oh, what are you doing, Klaus? Or maybe that's not the right word. That's not the right name to use. Think of another German name. But seriously, they're thinking, oh, what's another German name, Josh? Steiner? Hans, there you go. Hans, Angelique says Hans. Oh, what are you thinking, Hans? Take off that tinfoil hat. The government's not going to use that wall to keep us in. Oh, you're just being a conspiracy theorist. Quit listening to, what would Alex Jones's name be if he was a German? Andreas Jones-Steiner. Quit listening to Andreas Jones-Steiner. He's going to lead you down the wrong path. He's just a crazy person. He thinks that the government is turning the frogs gay, for heaven's sakes. You can't listen to anything he says about this wall being bad. And I know it sounds rather comical, but it's true. You get my point. that back then, I'm sure there were people that were called conspiracy theorists that saw reality, that saw things for what they were. So, why is it that we're not at one of those points in time right now? And I'm not saying that we are. There's nothing definitive. There are no certainties. But at least you've got to consider it. And another thing that I would encourage you guys to do is think about the pushback. If any of you have said, you know what, this, I don't know, these restrictions that's coming down from the government, it doesn't seem like they're prioritizing honesty. It doesn't seem like they're prioritizing integrity. It doesn't seem like they really have the best interest of the public as their first priority. And then you get the pushback with these people, and then you maybe insinuate that, hey, this could turn into XYZ bad time in history. And what do they always push back with? Oh, that'll never happen in the United States. Oh, what are you talking about? That'll never happen here. Why? Have you ever asked them just that simple question? Why? What makes you so sure? Are the American people, the American public, are they any less receptive to being manipulated than the Germans were, than the Italians were, than the Russians were? At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have very similar hardwiring. So if it can happen there, it can definitely happen here. And if the best rebuttal that you have to your questions is just, oh, it'll never happen here, just say why. And see what type of answer you get. My guess is it'll just be crickets. And that tells you everything that you need to know about the world that we live in today. That we don't want to lose sleep over this stuff. We don't want to allow it to stress us out, but we definitely need to be cognizant of what's going on in the world around us and the potential problems that may arise in the future. And maybe the fact that we are on a very slippery slope right now that we do not want to be on. And knowing that, being aware of that, it gives you a sense of urgency that, hey, I need to make decisions now as to how I'm going to maintain the level of freedom for myself and my kids and my grandkids that I've been able to experience for the last, 3 or 4 decades here in the United States. And you got to ask yourself, what's the downside to that? Like trying to have a plan B and just thinking through what's going on in the world today and thinking through things from a standpoint of being skeptical. What's your downside there? I don't think there is one. As long as you're planning and standing up for freedom and liberty in your own life, and then trying to open up people's eyes as to the importance of that and the importance of free market capitalism, what's your downside? There is none. So that's the main message here, above and beyond just highlighting what's going on in Denmark and showing you that decades happen where nothing goes by, and then there's weeks that go by that decades happen. And I think we're seeing that right in front of our eyes in 2020 and 2021. And even if the people that invented this have good intentions, you have to realize that the government is going to take that technology and use it to take us to this Orwellian state that looks a lot like 1984. Regardless of, look at the atomic bomb, for heaven's sakes. Look at what the government did there with that technology. You see, it can be meant for good, but at the end of the day, when the central planners get it, they're going to turn it into something that is extremely detrimental. And with the case of these goggles, basically, that tells you who has had medicine and who hasn't, that's going to be in my opinion, a way for the government to take away your freedom and liberty and not give you more, or not. It's definitely going to be a way for them to take away your freedom and liberty. It's not going to be a way for them to protect your freedom and liberty. Have you read the book Merchants of Despair by Robert? No, I haven't. Robert Zubrin. I think you might like it. It talks about Malthusianism. Yeah, the Club of Rome and other things you might find interesting or horrifying. And if you guys aren't following that, I discussed this with Whitney Webb. So if you haven't watched my video with her, my interview, I'd strongly suggest checking that out, because she talks about the origins of the World Economic Forum. And when you go back and really study this stuff, you see that a lot of these clubs or societies that kind of formed in to what we know today as the World Economic Forum and other of these groups for the global elite, they started with from a foundation of Malthusianism and also eugenics. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Try not to lose sleep over this. It's not to stress you out, but it's just to make you aware of the world around you so that you can go ahead and have a good, solid plan B, so that you can sleep well at night. Just that's the intention of these videos. So enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Always stand up, fight for freedom and liberty, free market capitalism. See you on the next video.